So I just press this button here if I want to change. Okay, got it. Thank you, Kostadine. It's actually a pretty wild ride since I made the decision last May to move to Greece. I haven't regretted it. And so has Dimitri Marouli. So I'm a computer science math person from my background. I'm a programmer. I've been lucky that most of my career I built it in startups. Had quite a few good exits and landed at Google and Shopify. All to say that I've been on kind of like on one end of the spectrum talking to investors, and now I have the privilege to actually be on the other side investing in founders, which is pretty exciting. Just to finish kind of that background, it's we play in the pre-seed space. Feel free to go and visit the website, and feel free to also get in touch if you have more questions post this talk on what specifically we do for the region. So from the perspective of investments, your initial investment, nothing is a science. You can't really write it down and say, hey, take this piece of paper and follow this, and voila, you'll get funding and you'll be successful. It's actually a roller coaster ride. So what we'll go through here is just a really simple attempt to give you the gotchas and what you need to be really focused on, so that ride is as smooth as it can be. There will be lots of pivots, and so expect to actually, receive lots of no's, listen, and iterate and improve quickly. So before we actually start understanding, who the investor is and why they should be investing in you, I think one really important detail that I think every founder needs to start from is understanding who your customer is. We see quite a bit of founders come to the table and they say, okay, I'm a B2B, I'm a B2B to C, and SaaS or consumer. Sometimes they mix the two. So my advice is understand your personas, go through the exercises, and there's loads of material out there that will help you understand and identify for the problem that you're trying to solve what those users are. Understand the difference between who your users are and actually who's paying you, because it could be like a completely different thing. And use techniques like user research, have actual dialogues with real customers, invite them to sessions to actually see your prototype and work with your product. And I call it product because even as simple as mock-ups is sufficient to actually illustrate, what your deliverables are. And capture data. This information that you're going to build will allow you to focus on your priorities. And my first interaction with founders is to understand what their primary focus is. What is that thing in the next 3, 6, or 9 months is going to be the deliverable. So focus on your customers and understand where you're going to drive the product. I like to start kind of always from the goal of why you're actually visiting an investor. And in the early stages, especially if you're getting your first ticket, what you should be proud of at the end is not necessarily the money you got, but the fact that you have a confirmation that you have the right recipe and the right ingredient as an entrepreneur to make it happen. And so early stage investments are all about the people. So when you pick your founder, and it's not necessarily that there's two or three, you can go and read studies and figure out if, it's all about, not being one. That's also not true. It could work. Um, but it's important to have working relationships with the individual that you're with, and being able to articulate it really well to the investor with actual examples, the good, the bads, and the uglies that you had, in order to show that you're able to solve a difficult problem, and also be able to show how you will grow. So we find a lot of times founders come together. They've been schoolmates, great. They've been friends, outside of school. They did a little bit of work together, but yet there isn't a strong relationship and binding between the two founders. So it's critical to actually show that whatever you're solving, that you have your hands dirty in the activities of the startup. It's not necessarily true that you need to have a tech founder. They could be both business people, and you might have a founding engineer that will help you out. So the combination of disciplines is not really relevant. It's all about how you share the responsibility and how you communicate to the investors what those are, so we can see a balance on the team. I would say in pre-seed phase, the early stage, you probably need to go at talking to at least a dozen investors to get a first crack at like what feedback you get from the individuals, both in terms of if they like the team, what improvements you need to make, and if you're a fit for their portfolio. It's important that you're able to make this cycle really quick, because founders usually get mired in having meetings, iterating on their pitch decks, and not really focusing on their product. We see that time and time again with individuals who come to us with a view into a problem they want to solve. They've received feedback that, go for a prototype and come back with more feedback to see where you're at. Maybe participate in an accelerator, or go to an incubator, so that you can improve your skill sets. And so those important pieces of feedback are critical for you to go out, quickly adjust and change, land the money that you need, and then move forward. We'll talk a little bit later what that money and what form that comes in. But like I said, it's really important to see that founders make the connection, listen, receive feedback, make improvements, potentially land the money, like I said, in one way or another, and actually get back to work. I feel that the funding that you get in this pre-seed stage, early stage, should be enough for you to get through 6, 9, 12 months worth of effort. This is not an exercise of trying to like make it last and keep it going. You need to set your goals, achieve those objectives, and then probably halfway through that 12-month period, start thinking about what your next steps or what your next round is. It's actually really easy after a few rounds of money to see the growth path of a particular startup. You'll actually see when things flatten is that when they're actually doing work. They're not out there banging doors and figuring out, what the next, set of money is. I don't know about the tendency in the region, but at least in where I've come from in North America, there are concepts of a structure that follows this madness of investments. It starts all the way from going to a bank and maybe getting a credit card, maybe even a small loan, sometimes even just asking family and friends with some cash to actually get going is the initial debt someone starts with when they begin their journey. There's hard to put actually a number of valuation on it. It's literally those things that you're in a classroom or in a dormitory or in your garage or a basement where you're actually doing this stuff. Pre-seed is when you might be able to get a valuation of 1 maybe to 5 million. I'm putting that in context of euros in our region here. Valuations across the world significantly change. And thereafter, you get into kind of the seed rounds, Series A, Series B, which go into kind of bigger valuations and bigger tickets. In the first phase of your raises, the structures are all convertibles. And what does that mean? You might have heard the term of, a SAFE or an ASA or things like that. These are promissory notes for equity. These are the safest things that you can actually put in place to give at least a promise to people who have given you money early on that down the road they'll get equity. And so I strongly encourage that you actually negotiate through convertible notes your first round. For equity on Series A plus, pre-Series A, you actually use the standard, stock structures that exist in each country. They differ between North America, the UK, Europe, or even Greece. And a lot of that stuff is templatized. And so you should leverage what's out there in the community. I've left you with some references later for you to kind of look at. My experience with respect to some of the startups that I've done and ones where I've been involved with, especially recently in Greece as an angel, is that early on, finding people that actually understand the problem that you're trying to solve is more valuable than finding a VC that's actually going to give you the cash. Angels are individuals that have experience in probably the sector that you're in. They've done it a few times. They've probably failed 95% of the time, but they enjoy collaborating with founders on these technical and challenging problems. Greece lacks a structured angel community, and that's one thing that we're trying to do with Genesis is build it out. You will find them. You have to look hard to find them. Some of them are obvious. Cold calls to individual is proper context. You'll be surprised you'll actually get a response. So I encourage you to build out your angel network while you're getting to kind of these 10 to 12 VCs that you'll knock the door on. On the VC side, there's lots of things that you can actually go out. There's crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. They're pretty prominent in the UK and North America, not as much in our region yet. There's also VCs even in Romania, like SeedBlink, that do angel crowdsourcing for you and can find the money that you need to get going. So there's lots of opportunities in our region to go out and look for money. Outside of the structure of a convertible versus an equity deal, convertibles were intentionally brought together to make the founder activity initiation very easy. They're just 3-4 pages. They're pretty standard. There's no legal complexity. You don't even have to involve a lawyer. That's how standard they are. And so that's one less headache with respect to how you move forward. Even an accountant is not required. But then when you get into equity, it's a lot more complex. You need lawyers, accountants, and you actually need to read every single word in those documents. You, as a founder, need to make sure you understand what you're signing up to, because these are binding and serious pieces of commitments. When you're making a deal, always think about your dilution. I'll talk about this a little later, but I think it's really important for you to understand, and this is also the reason why good angels and good VCs would like founders to keep as much of their company as possible. So try not to dilute yourself early on too much, and when you get to serious money, not more than 30 to 30, 35, 40%. And when you're actually making a commitment, make a commitment on post valuation, which is your projection based on what things you're going to deliver in 9, 12, 16 months of what you think your company is worth. Being able to negotiate 12 months ahead of time in comparison to where you were before is at a disadvantage to a founder. So it's best that you nail a post-money valuation as part of your negotiations. When you have a convertible note, you actually don't even need, those commitments. So that's why it makes it a lot easier. So now you're meeting investors. The thing that I feel is most important, and the stuff that I like seeing, is prototypes. Like in the early stages, coming to a presentation with a proverbial pitch deck is the standard thing. But what we want to see from the founders is the ability to tell a story and be able to tell it without needing to have like a deck in front of you and having to walk through all the details. Good investors have already seen the deck, probably have a perception of what this is, have looked into your profiles and understand who you are, and of course, until they meet you. So it's, I think, imperative, be prepared with a prototype, understand how to tell your story, and more importantly, don't think of it as a pitch deck or a half an hour session, because that's what you have to kind of, kind of a kick at the can, that you're actually going to drive a meeting with tons of data. All what investors want to see is quality information. Keep it really simple, focused on your user and the problem that you're trying to, cross the finish line with. A structured story on how you're going to achieve your North Star in 9 to 12 months, because that's how long your runway is going to last. And lastly, listen. In the short time that we've been here with Genesis, we've seen over 400 startups, and we've only invested in 10. That number is actually pretty high in terms of a conversion. It's usually maybe one or two, mostly because the 400 came from referrals, and so that that has made that number a little higher. But all I'm saying is, after seeing 400 pitch decks and 800 pairs of people, we have a little bit of a view and kind of what's out there, and hence the information and feedback that you get is, I think, really important. And when there's action items or takeaways, you need to make sure after like a few weeks, a month or so, however long it takes to actually address them, to come back material and say, these are the improvements that we've made. One thing that you need to be aware of, especially in pre-seed, is there's the ability for you to go through an accelerator. There's lots of them here in Greece and in the region, but I think you need to look for, and we're going to build one like this, where you're actually going through learning experiences and ways where, we can help you improve your stack, improve your product thinking, improve your UI, UX, and your business and marketing material. So we'll have that there in the second half of the year. There are lots of accelerators and incubators around the world, in Europe and North America. So please feel free to actually take a stab at looking at participating in such programs that actually give you that value. And like I said, you'll be hearing a lot of no's. Um, um, and early on, meeting the founders and getting successful impressions of them is the secret sauce. We're not really looking at if you're solving kind of the next thing since sliced bread. Um, um, it's more important for us to understand that the founders that are in front of us can actually do the job. Y Combinator has all the material you need, including early on as well as later. They continuously have updates, videos, podcasts, and templates that you can use that are applicable all over the world. So I strongly suggest to use that as a reference point. So one example, and I think I mentioned this in kind of passing with respect to where you are early on. So I've actually started this example at the seed level. So when you're at pre-seed, look at giving away 5 to 10% of your company. That's what reasonable VC partners are going to be driving to look for, depending on if the valuation is in kind of that 1 to 5 million euro range. When you're in the seed phase, and then you would get like 400,000 to 500,000 euros. Again, like 10% of that is in that range. So when you go to seed, you're jumping up a level to 10 to 15%. And therefore, if you're looking at, getting 1 million ticket at that next level, you're looking at a valuation of 10 to 15 million euro post money. And then further up the chain, you're heading into kind of the valuation of 50 to 100 million. So you need to think of this in chunks. Usually the first pre-seed money that you get should last you for about a year. In the seed should last you for about 2 or so years, and then 3 to 5 years for the Series A, for example, as you build and grow your team. So 5 million valuation, 15, 20 million valuation, 100 million valuation is kind of the journey that you're going to go through in terms of raising money. And as far as how big your team is, early on, it's probably 2, maybe 4 people. You can get maybe to 10 people with seed, and get to about like 30 to 50 people when you're in Series A. So I gave that number of 30% as kind of the earmark to roughly when you get to Series A, don't give up at more than 30 or so percent of your company. But one thing that it's important to do is have a clean cap table. Even at our level with Genesis, we'd like to just see the founders and a portion of the cap table that's allocated to your future employees, a 10% ESOP or something like that. It's critical for VCs that come on board to understand what percentage they have to work with. And so if you have a very complicated cap table, it becomes much more difficult in a negotiation, and then even more difficult if the deal is sweet on what you need to do to actually change it to make it work for the VCs that are investing. So a clean cap table is a critical thing to keep in mind as a founder moving forward. I think that's it. Blank slide. I forgot to say the thank you and I'm done slide, but questions. I hope there's lots of questions. I'm giving money away. Like,
yes, Jimmy.
So now you have explained how is the curve and how should you do to get to take off. But I'm actually wondering what does it actually mean to fail? Because you also talk about 95% will fail. But does it mean that all the money that your family put in, you will have to leave your home and what do you lose?
yeah, so really good point. I think early on, when you're in kind of that family mode, family, friends and family, credit card, you try to keep the exposure as local as possible. The recommendation there, and again, this is more personal, but I think there's many other options, is, keep your full-time job, or if you're in school, finish it. But this is more of a secondary priority. So you're okay to get a lot of no's at that point, or a lot of pivots and iterations. Maybe you have built your experience under your belt, like in a good software company, and you're in your third, fourth, or fifth year of employment. That's when you kind of start thinking, maybe on weekends I can kind of start looking at it. So you've accumulated the experience, a little bit of cash on the side, you've built relationships. So the no's there don't hurt that much, because you're still employed and maybe doing some stuff on the side with a few buddies. So that's the time in kind of that journey where you're going to explore a few opportunities where the no's don't hurt that much. When you get to like a pre-seed or seed stage, and that's kind of why I started with that slide, is someone believes in you, right? And they're there to support you. They want you to succeed. But what happens at that point? You have, like, at least with a founding team of 3, 4, 5 people, where you can actually do some magic for a few years, right? Like give it a real go to see where things are at. So the initial journey is where you need to kind of build a little bit of mental strength to get the no's, be smart to have the backups to actually get you through this, and drive it in that direction, listen, learn, and get better. In North America, being an intern or a co-op is a classic great opportunity while you're in university to experiment with stuff while you're studying and working every other term, and actually meeting people and understanding how the system works. So it's just an environment that just is a natural incubator to generate, experience, and maybe soften the nose, a little later. I don't know if it answers your question, but I'm kind of giving you a little bit of just optionality with respect to when most of the no's come, how to actually manage it, from there. At the end of the day, a year ago today, I met a few kids out of the AC University in Athens, and they had a great idea. And a year later, they haven't made any significant change. No impact, no nothing. So they're going to get the hard no they heard a year ago, right? So it's all about making some incremental improvement, seeing that commitment, and driving it forward. Hopefully that helps. Any other questions?
Yes, Marco.
Yeah, I wanted to. Sorry, I was so taken by the response that.
Was it a good response?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. I was. For a moment there, I forgot about my question, but I remembered now. the I just wanted to ask what a cap table is exactly, because you kind of gave us an idea indirectly, but
Yeah. So if there's two people that start, and you put a valuation of $100 on your company, or a thousand euro or whatever, they each own 50% of the company. It doesn't have to be formalized. It can be an informal agreement between the two founders to start. If you start now bringing family members in and friends to give you some money to get going, your both 50%, get diluted to what commitment you're making them. So you might give 10% to the next two angels or contributors. So that makes your ownership each 40%, and the two angels get 10% each for the total amount of say every stock option was $1. You started with 1,000. Now you have 400 each, and they have 100 each, and so you get diluted every time you bring people into your cap table. If you go to an investor and your cap table shows that the two founders have less than 50%, or the two co-founders, one has like 70% and the other one has 10%, and you have like 10 or 15 people in your cap table, how am I going to give you 500,000 euros? Like how is that going to work? It's very complex. So just keep an eye out on how clean your cap table is, until at some point your transaction becomes an equity transaction, and then everybody's name with their, I guess in Greece, their rafimi, is allocated a number of shares at this price for a capitalization of 5 million euro, and then the numbers kind of just fall through there. But hopefully I've given you a little bit of the simplicity for informality at the beginning that can lead to complexity, to when an institutional investor comes and says, what the hell is going on here now? Like, who owns this company, and stuff like that. So yeah.
I don't know how clean it can be in Greece with grandmas giving to groups.
Yeah.
Probably giving you without expecting anything in return.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best.
So there's a cultural element that is quite strong.
and yeah, actually, you bring up a really good point. So I even in North America, you get grants because you apply for research and so on, which is pretty cool. This money is non-diluted money. Having that money on the table when you're talking to a VC is actually important. Having a VC find out later that you also had 500,000 euro grant from the University of Berkeley, it is not a good thing. It just needs to be recorded, considered in your budget, and part of the investment strategy.
Yeah, I just want to say, maybe it wasn't very clear. So the cap table is a capitalization table,
Yeah.
which at any given point in time, it lists how much money has somebody given to the company and for how much percentage. So it's a list of the ownership of the company. Yes.
Yep.
In case, I don't know.
Yeah, there's some jargon that we're not all familiar with.
Okay. Y Combinator is the best, at least one source you can go to get a lot of these answers, videos, podcasts. Any other question?
Do we have any questions on the chat? So I have one. So you saw already 400 pitches in how long? What amount of time?
We started, we put up the website to start our experimentation, because we also did what I said in my first slide, is actually know our customers. So we were going through the process of being assessed if we were the right people for the fund. We said, what the heck, let's start and see what's actually out there. So we started a website in May of last year. It was strictly organic and or referrals. And so since May, we've seen just under 400 startups.
And these are all mostly in Athens, Athens
All,
based?
I would say about 95% of them are Greek founders. Out of that, probably 70% of them, 60 to 70%, I don't know the numbers, are from abroad. Like, so they've started something outside of Greece. And, you know, the other 30 to 40% were like native in Greece. And the 10 that we invested in, it represents the same number. So 7 of them were from abroad. So the parent company is outside of Greece. They have some of them have some presence, but will now that's a requirement. And the other 3 were native in Greece.
And those teams, those 400 teams, all of them are companies that have been established, or some of them are just attempts? Attempts, right?
Yeah, actually, I can get data and share it with you. With everyone in the media, everyone's asking for this information. So before you had 50, that's immaterial. You know, 100, okay, that's all right. But now we're like material. We can actually make a little bit of an assessment of the community,
it's
and share that information widely.
Maybe something relevant because so there's some data from Big Pie where we also have a facility where you can submit the business plan from the website. I think in the 3.5 years that we operated, I don't think there was a single investment that originated from the website. All the investments that we made came through, you know, more sort of direct connections. And I think overall the quality of the submissions on the website was very poor. But the number, I think, is similar numbers, probably around 400 per year or something. There's a lot of noise, including crazy ideas, including crazy people.
I think
should be locked up. But
in comparison to the big pie VFs and the world, which are in kind of seed Series A, we're actually looking and entertaining a lot earlier. Although that message wasn't there at the beginning, now it is, and we still see, you know, there is low quality out there. But at the end of the day, to us, what the pitch deck looks like is a little bit secondary, because we want to meet the people, and that is what drives a bit our first decision to meet or not.
what is your average ticket for these 10 investments?
And I think right now it's 350,000 euro. So it's
For each one?
an average. The average.
The average for
We've
it.
had ones that are small 100 and a couple that are at the 400 level.
Oh, okay.
Marco. I know.
I see you know my name already.
Everybody knows Marco by now.
You kind of hinted at my next question. What do you think are the most important things when you see a pitch or you meet someone who's interested in being funded, or vice versa? What are the most common red flags that make you say this is a no?
The most common red flag is when someone starts talking about SOMs and bombs and like big like I have this $30 billion market, and it's like it's okay. The 3 things that Dimitri and I want to drive to is the founding team is like an A team. They've worked together and they're willing to be part of a journey. 2, in Greece they called it exostrefia, which means get it out of Greece as soon as you fucking can, right? Like just like get out. And it's not that the market is bad, it's just too small, right? You're not gonna. And 3, we want you to be a Series A or B company in 5 years. You sign up for that? Let's talk. If you're willing to spend your grandma's money like for 5 years, that's okay too, right? You can make a living from it, but we want to be inspired by people that want to drive a journey like that.
Any significant gaps you saw in the profile of these ideas in Greece that you would like to see more? Or anything that is overrepresented on the other side?
So the technical aspect of what Greek founders bring to the table is outstanding. Very solid technical foundation, very solid solutions. Two, the second thing that we don't see as much is, where is your growth plan like in 2 or 3 years? And it's different that you're going to say, okay, I'm going to go to Italy or Bulgaria, but how are you going to go there? Like, what have you done? Have you walked the streets? Have you talked to customers there? They might be like completely different coffee drinkers there than they are in Greece. So you need to do your homework, and at least talking to us, we need to see that.
Final question from me. Before I go to Imad, was there any percentage of academics in those teams? Or was it zero, or was it very low?
For me, not to remember a significant number, it was low.
Expected. Okay.
I don't know if you are at liberty to really answer this, but if you were to give us a few examples of good ideas and bad ideas.
I think your mic is on. You need to press the button.
Is that okay now?
Mine works.
Okay. Sorry. I was just saying, I don't know if you're at liberty to give us a few good examples, bad examples. And the other part of the question is, if we were to represent the ideas in terms of technology readiness level from 0 to 10, in 10, I mean completely ready to go in mass production. Is it exponential, the chance of getting successful at getting the funding at 10, or is it really not necessarily that, there's a relationship there?
So I'll answer the second question first. I think technology readiness these days is a simple recipe. You need to use cloud-enabled tools that are available everywhere, elasticity in your growth, capturing metrics. Those are standard things. Having machine learning, data science, thinking in your solution. There's 7 or 8 things. From that perspective, that's just a checkbox, and the team has thought about it. They're using the right tools. Good stuff. You're on your way. It doesn't look like you'll be doing anything radical to not drive the growth that you need. With respect to what I see less of these days on the technical side is focus on what product features you need to get out the door. Like the thinking of why I picked this feature versus another, coming in concert with I need to grow the team by 10 people versus I just grow it by 2 and I get the 2 most important features out is the right early approach to drive. So that thinking is a little lacking. It has to do with business and marketing and how you drive priorities. I know it's not the technical question you're asking, but the features that you're going to build might hide some complexities in your technical solution. And so if you don't look at solving the hardest and most impactful ones, you'll never know how complex your system is going to be a year or 2 down the road. So tackle the hard ones and most impactful ones now, and that'll resonate to an investor, rather than doing the easy ones like a two-sided marketplace. Like, okay, been there, done that. Now, an example of stuff that just isn't ready yet is things like cryptocurrency. Like someone coming to the table and saying, I can get a license in Lithuania to give me money to fund cryptocurrency creation, to fund the marketplace. Like, okay, I just wanted to talk to see if the founders knew what blockchain and cryptocurrency was, and they didn't have the technical know-how. So that's kind of the one end of the spectrum of a type of, awful pitch deck. Only just wanted to hear because we want to build a pipeline in kind of the blockchain crypto space. The other one is everyone seems to be like in Greece, especially loving marketplaces, but it takes like it's a really hard thing to make the right marketplace. So there were people pitching us, I'm a creator of certain fashion. All right, so now how can I actually bring creators onto my system and actually get the stuff sold in a unique way? So developing a website seemed like an easy thing for them, but it never moved them to like moving to another country. So how do you move to another country? So that was another example of like, oh, I'm going to set up a marketplace. This is going to be successful because it's great in Athens. But then there's no way that they're able to go to another country with the structure and the thinking that they've had. So that's kind of like another example of a weak, pitch. I don't know if it gives you just a little bit of insights on the thinking. Yeah, it's more traditional businesses, day-to-day things that work well locally, but just won't scale.
If I may, I want to add a perspective because this is a very software-centric view of ventures. Okay, so. Sorry, yes. So I just want to say that this is a little bit of a very software-centric view of ventures. So, for example, in talking about the technology readiness levels, at BigPie, we invested in a company that came out of Forthnet that has nanostructured laser processing of glass to give it non-reflective properties. Okay, so that has its own challenges as a company and its own sort of technology readiness in the sense of how big a glass you can treat, how fast you can process glass, etc., which is very different than the software-centric world. Or in actual fact, at BigPie, we have a lot of life sciences ventures. One of them comes to mind, Tubul, which has biomarkers to detect aneurysm. Okay, so they measure 9 things in your blood, and they can tell if you have early signs of aneurysm. Okay, so that has its own sort of cycle of regulatory approvals, testing, etc., which is different than software, but it's very much sort of relevant for ventures. And I guess here, with antennas, for example, if you design a physical antenna, right, and you do measurements, refinement, etc., that's different than the traditional software-centric world. Having said that, the majority of the investments, I guess, these days is in the software sort of space.
Yep.
Okay.
I think there's one more question there.
Yeah.
The fellow next to Marco.
Can I say something? Since we have a panel, and that's the whole purpose of the panel, to steer a discussion, shall we save it for 20 minutes later? So we have a coffee break now, and then all the speakers are invited to participate in the panel, and then we can have the chat then. Because otherwise we'll just eat into the coffee break, which is, by Greek standards, unacceptable. Okay.